Alright, so for this video, I will be exploring how you can use the Firebase authentication feature to add user authentication to your application. So you create your application, you build out your login screen or login page, and you now want an easy way to basically authenticate your users and have them log in. For that purpose, we'll be using Firebase as our backend to basically assist us with the authentication and logging users in. Now, for more information on Firebase authentication, you can check the Firebase documentation that speaks to authentication. Alright, so it gives you pretty much all the information that you will need. Alright, so you can read through the documentation. Alright, now what we will do first is just sign in to Firebase, and you can use your Gmail or Google account to sign in. Alright, once you are signed in, you're going to click on Go to Console, and from here you can add a project. Now, before I add a project, let me first go ahead and load the project that I'll be working on. Alright, so I have Visual Studio Code open. So let me just find my project folder, open folder, and I have a folder called Firebase Auth. That's the name of my project. So I'm going to open that. Alright, and let's just do a quick preview to see what this application looks like so far. So I'm going to open this with live server. Alright, and this is currently our login page. Now we want to log in with email address and a password. Alright, I also added a little feature here where if we want to register users to our application, then we can go ahead and do so. Alright, so to get this login screen fully functional and synced with Firebase, what I need to do now is just go ahead and add a project. So I'm going to click on add project. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it Firebase Auth. And I must point out as well, if you already have your project set up, so let's say for example, you were using Firebase Firestore and you have a project set up already, then you are perfectly on your way. But this is basically just to take you from scratch. Alright, so I'm going to show you from scratch, and then I'm going to show you if you have a project set up already, or you can go ahead and basically do the same thing. Alright, so let's just scroll down and click on continue. Now it's asking about Google Analytics, if you want to add Google Analytics. Currently I don't want to, so I am going to say no to this. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down where it says enable Google Analytics. I'm just going to disable that for now and click on create project. Now once our project has been created for us, we can go ahead and basically set up our user authentication. Alright, so our project is ready. So I'm just going to click on continue. And this is basically the backend that is now linked to our project. So we can do everything from here. So we can do authentication, we can set up a Firestore database, we can set up a real-time database, there is storage option, hosting options, and so forth. Right? But we are interested for now at this point in authentication. Okay, so I'm going to click on authentication. So select authentication, then select get started. Alright, I did say I'm going to keep it simple. So I'm just going to use email and password for our authentication. Now there are different sign-in providers, so email, password, phone, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable email password authentication. Currently, that is disabled. So I'm just going to click on this and then enable. We can also enable passwordless sign in, but I don't want that feature currently. So I'm just going to enable so we can use email and password to sign in, because back in our application, I want someone to enter an email and enter a password to get access. Alright, so once you have enabled this, just click on save. So as you can see, email and password authentication has been enabled. Alright, now there's a tab here that says users. Just click on that tab and you can manually add a user. So we'll do this now just to get started. So I'm going to call this user John W at gmail.com. Alright, and I'm going to set a password, and the password is password1, and I'm going to add that user. Now, later on in this video, I'm going to show where we can write a script to basically add the user to the backend from our front end here, all right, where we can register a new user. But for now, we have one user already registered, all right. Now we need to grab a bit of script from Firebase to get our to sync the backend and the front end. All right, so I'm going to click on project overview. All right, now we're still in the Firebase Auth project, and there are some options here. So it says get started by adding Firebase to your app, and there are different options: iOS, Android, and web. I am building out a web application, so I'm going to go ahead and click on web. All right, now we are asked to give our app a nickname or an alias, so we need to give it a name to register it. So I'm going to say Auth app. All right, I don't want hosting right now, so I'm not going to click on that option, and I'm going to go ahead and register the app. All right, so once the registration of the app has been completed, we are given this bit of script right here, right? And we will need to now add this to our project to basically sync the Firebase backend to the front end of our project, which is the login screen. All right, so I'm just going to copy all of this right here. All right, now back in VS Code, this is my login screen HTML script. All right, now I'm going to add this bit of script that I just copied from Firebase to my project. So copy, paste. Let me just take out the comment here. All right, now I need to add one additional script tag, and that is to basically show that we are using auth.js from Firebase. So I copied this one that was given to us, the top one, which is the Firebase app.js. All right, so I'm going to change the app to auth.js, and we are basically on our way. Now, where it says initialize Firebase, I'm going to create an identifier, and I'm going to make it a constant. I'm going to call it auth I'm going to set it equal to Firebase dot auth. Right, and you can get more information on this in terms of the auth method. You can get more information on it in the documentation here. All right, so you can just read through the documentation again if you're not clear on anything. All right, so that was done. Now, what we need is a JavaScript file that will basically contain the code to allow a user to log in. It will also allow a user to log out. So I'll add that to it as well. And it will also allow a user to register and send their registration information to the Firebase backend. So I have a folder here called JS. I'm going to add a new file. I'm going to call that file auth.js. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is to listen for any state or status change. So I'm going to listen for authentication status change or changes. All right. So I'm going to add a bit of code to this now. All right. So this will allow us to basically listen for any state change. So if I use a login or logout, then this will basically register that information for us, or well, it's actually listening for that bit of information, either a user logging in or logging out. All right. And when a user log in, for example, I am just consoling logging this so we can see the user that logged in, and I'm console logging as well. All right, let me also try and see the user that logged out. All right. All right, so next I am going to write the script for this registration form right here. So I'm going to set up the registration form. So I'm just put a comment. All right. So not to bore you with me typing all this code, I'm going to just add the code to our auth.js file. All right. So now I created a identifier here called sign up form, and it is basically doing a query selector. So it's looking for this ID, and let me just show you where that is in our index, which is the form itself. All right. All right, so you can see here where we have an ID and it's equal to sign up form. So this is our sign up form. All right, so I need this ID to use inside our auth.js. All right, we are now listening for an event, and that's a submit event. All right, and we will be getting the user info. So whatever the user type here as their email and their password, we want to get that bit of information or that bit of data. All right, and then we can go ahead and create the user again. You can read up on this create user with email and password in the Firebase documentation. All right, so that's the code for that. and this is activated inside our side form. And again, this is our side form, right? And the create account is basically, well, it is tied to the side form that we have here. That's the idea I am using for that particular div that is hosting the side form or hosting the new user registration form. So it's right here, right? Well, it's here, I should say, because it's an ID, right? And this will allow us to basically add a new user to our Firebase backend. Alright, so next I want to set up the actual login for the user. Alright, so our user login. Alright, so again here I'm making reference to our login form, and we can find that ID inside our index.html. Alright, so we can see it here. Alright. Again, we are adding an event listener, and it's a click event. We are getting the email and password that is typed by our user. So whatever email and password that is typed, we want to get that. And then we're going to use the sign in with email and password method, again from Firebase, which basically will now load this password and, well, that email and this password to our method here. And once it matches with what is in the Firebase backend, then it will allow the user to log in. And then all I'm doing here is just resetting the form, and I'm using a bit of straight JavaScript here, or vanilla JavaScript as some persons call it, to basically move to the new page, which is this page right here. All right. So finally, I want to add a logout feature. So let's say user logout. All right, so add that to it. And basically, again, it's a click event. And once the logout button has been pressed or logout option has been clicked, then it will fire this sign out method. Again, it's from Firebase, so it's all in the documentation. All right, so reading is key, and our application should be good to go. I just now need to add this JavaScript file to our index.html. So let me go ahead and add that. All right, I'm just going to copy this out. Yes, I know it's a bad habit to just copy and paste in, but yeah, comes in handy when you want to move a little bit faster. All right, so we're going to add auth.js, and that is us. We are on our way. All right, so all seems to be well. Now, for the moment of truth, we are going to see if we are able to log in using our username here, which is the email and the password that we created. So let's see if that will work for us. So it's JOHN password was password one. All right, login. All right, and as you can see, we were successfully logged in. All right. Now, once we are logged in, we are given this screen, which is also tied to Firebase, but that's for a different conversation. All right. So once I click on my menu option here, there is a logout button. All right. So if I click on logout, then it should successfully log us out or sign us out. So everything is working. So just to recap, we created our project that we are calling Firebase Auth. Call it whatever you want to call it. That's not the important part. Now, once the project was created, I went in and clicked on the authentication option. I enabled email password authentication. All right. I added a user just so we could test the login. Now, the next thing I want to do is to just basically see if we can add a user here by using our front end. So we don't have an account, we want to register for an account. So click on that and let's make this Williams at yahoo.com. Let's make this super hard. A B C D 1 2 3 4. Create account. Alright, now let's check to see if the account was actually created. I might need to do a refresh. Alright, and the account was actually created. So instead of us going into the backend to create the account or to add a user, the user can also do it from the front end. Alright, now all that was possible is by using this method right here, or this function right here that we created. Right, so this bit of code, this allowed us to basically have the user create their own account from the front end. All right, now something else that we did to allow this to allow the back end and the front end to sync is by grabbing this bit of script from Firebase. All right. Now let's say, for example, you already have a project created and you want to find a way to grab that to add to your project. What you can do is project overview. I have one app already linked to this particular project, so I can click on that, go to settings, and if I scroll down, I see the script here for me as well. Alright, so we can copy it from here and then just paste that into your project. And that is basically it. So again, what I would say is rewatch the video for the different parts if you are not clear on something. So we add a listener to listen for, well, we are basically, first thing that we did here in the auth.js is to listen for a change in user status, whether they log in or log out. All right. Next, we created this registration option where the user can register from the front end and it will save their data or their registration information to our Firebase backend. All right. And we are basically using this create user with email password method. All right. Again, see the Firebase documentation on authentication. Then we created this function here. Alright, so I wrote this bit of code to allow the user to log in. Alright, again, the main thing driving this is the sign in with email, password, and password method. And then we just do a window location href to the page that we want to get to. And then finally, we set the ability for the user to log out or sign out. Alright, and the sign out method is what allows us to achieve that. Right, so that is it. It's a pretty straightforward process. So you'll build out your login page, which is this right here. Build it out however you want to. You can use Bootstrap. You can write your own CSS to style it. You can use some materialized CSS. You can make use of your Google material icons and stuff like that. Alright, so that is it on the use of Firebase for authentication purposes.